morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Channel 23's The Faces of Carlsbad. Our sponsor is Intrepid Potash, and we're televising this show in the beautiful Artist Gallery in downtown Carlsbad on a beautiful sunny day. And we hope that you will enjoy what you're going to see next. We don't know, but you might know this gentleman, you might not know this gentleman.
You might not want to know this.
Anyway, he's an old friend of mine, Israel Palma. Israel, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bob. Glad to be here.
Anyway, what we're going to do on this program so that the people who know you will say, oh, I didn't know that little bit about him.
Oh, I see.
And then the other people who said, I've never seen the guy before. Where does he come from? Well, he's the walking interpretation of what education should be like in America.
Should be like. That's the key word.
Yes, should be like. Well, anyway.
Not is, but.
Let's go back into the early days where you were born, where you grew up, and the interesting thing that happened when you crossed into New Mexico.
Ooh, there's so many. It's just it's a big bundle of history right there.
That's right.
Yes, when I wasn't born in the States. Just like certain people in the production of this company, I'm a foreigner. I was born in Mexico, and way back when.
What city?
South of Chihuahua City, west of Parral, Chihuahua.
Parral?
Yeah, down there where Pancho Villa used to be.
Oh, yes.
Stronghold. And I came here when I was 10 years old. Landed at Puckett not knowing one word of English. And I had very wonderful teachers. Mrs. Tatarian, Mrs. Galt. The principal was Mr. Burdett.
Oh, yes.
He set me real quick on the straight and narrow. And they remained friends to the end, till their end, unfortunately. And they got me started on the right track, along with the family that sponsored us when we came here, the White family, Hillary White, and we worked for a little bit for them. Then they didn't have enough work, so we went to work for Walker Hood, the Hood families out at Black River Village.
Oh, yes, okay.
I have this little syndrome, or this little type of luck that I've had throughout my life of meeting people that are very key, not at that time, but later on in the juncture of my life, that they seem to be, they have influence in my life, and it always seemed to be a positive influence. I met Joe Stell way back when he was still teaching or coaching.
Yes,
as
that's
a coach.
right.
I used to play football with his son, Jim, and so I met him, and he influenced me. The Walker Hood family, I grew up with Dale Hood, and they influenced me. And then we moved to Washington Ranch when I was in the 6th grade.
Oh,
and I met a bunch of people there, the Ballard family.
Yeah.
You know how prolific they are, and they are influential in the town in certain ways, and in good ways. And they influenced me toward that. So I picked up a lot of values along the way, and I met a lot of key people. Miss Eller, remember Miss Eller?
I remember
She was
her.
my math teacher. And we kept in touch till the end also. I came back, I went off to California to get an education, college education, because at the time that I graduated here, I didn't have an idea what I was going to do. 3 days later, I was in California.
What school?
In California? I went to a junior college for the first 2 years, Antelope Valley College out in Lancaster, which is out by Edwards Air Force Base, if you know where that is, up in the Mojave Desert. And then from there, I transferred to Long Beach State. Uncle Sam had the hand on my shirt tails telling me that I had to go to Vietnam at that time, and so I enrolled in college real quick and became interested in foreign languages since I spoke Spanish and wrote it, and I learned French for about 3 years, and I haven't practiced it too much, but when I went to Paris it came in handy. But I got my bachelor's out there in teaching foreign languages. I started teaching in Wilmington, which is inner city kind of schooling, and it's one way to really get involved in the trenches as far as teaching was concerned. I think we had something like 12 ethnic groups there at that junior high where I taught.
Yeah.
And that was back in the late 60s and early 70s. I happened to come here in the spring of '75.
Stop a moment.
Yes.
You mentioned Vietnam. Did they call you up? Were you drafted?
No, I was not. I was 2S all the way, which means a student deferment, as you know.
Student deferment, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so I stayed in school till I graduated from college after 5 years. In California, it took, not that I was behind in school. It didn't take me 5 years to graduate, but 5 years to get my teaching credential. In California, you had to go a 5th year. And by that time, the war was winding down.
Yeah, right.
And when I came here, Mr. McCloskey, you know Reed.
Oh, Reed McCloskey,
yes,
absolutely.
That's another person that I happened to meet way back when, because I went to school with his late son, Scott.
Yes.
And so we knew each other. And Raul Quintana, my parents knew him from way back then, and he was on the board at the time.
Yes, indeed.
So it was, and then of course Mr. Birdie was still at the central office. Mr. Lowe's was at the high school, which happened to be somebody that I'd known. And through all those connections, somehow I was blessed with the guidance that I needed.
Now, you were lucky.
Well, yeah.
Because when I came here, the first couple months I had to sell apples on the corner down here.
Well, that was so bad?
Yeah, well, people didn't like me.
Well, that was a long time ago, wasn't it?
Yes.
Was that the original apple of...
Good Hope.
The Good Hope.
The
it
Good
wasn't
Hope
the one that was offered to Eve.
Oh, no, no, no.
Oh,
no,
you're not
no.
that old.
I'm not that old, no. I'm pretty old, but not that old.
You had to sell apples.
Yes. Oh,
What year was that?
1957.
57.
Yeah.
Oh, well, the spring of 1958, January of 1958 is when we landed in Black River Village.
Uh-huh.
And out there, Black River, where the Christian Center is.
Three little streams come together out there. I found that out.
Yes.
Yes, that's
Tres
interesting.
Rios, something.
Yeah.
Which, that has nothing to do with it, but I need to talk to Jed Howard, because all this country around here was owned by Spanish people way back when. And instead of Tres Rios, there's a Siete Rios north of here.
Is that why when I leave my house every morning and I see the cats out in the front yard, I say, "Buenos dias, gatos, los gatos"? It automatically comes to me.
Well, of course. But anyway, it's just been, I have been lucky in meeting the right people along the way. And that's what got me, when Mr. McCloskey offered me a job, I asked him if he had any kind of a counseling job or something like that, because I had a lot of psychology training in college for the 5th year out there in California. And he said, yes, we happen to have a position here if you're willing to work toward getting it and coming back. Well, I took about $12,000 cut in pay per year just to move here. And I wanted to come teach in God's Little Acre, and here I am. After 30 years, I retired in 2005 and worked through my way from elementary through junior high, mid-high, which became P.R. Leyva, Porky Leyva, another good friend of mine. And I kind of was lucky enough and very fortunate to be on the committee that decided to name the school after him. There was some contentious argument back and forth, and we finally persevered enough to get it named after him.
Did you know Bob Swayze?
Sure. There's another person.
Jim O'Hearn?
Yes, yes.
And Porky Leyva, those three men.
The announcers?
Those three men were instrumental in getting me appointed to the library board, where I've been for 32 years now, along with Walter Gerals. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's the people that you meet and the people that work for you and have trust in you, and I've always been very grateful.
Yes,
very
likewise.
Grateful. Yeah.
Now, what elementary school did you start in?
Oh, I started, I had an office, and I served all the district. I had federal money at that time. I was paid by federal money.
Oh, I see.
And I was counselor home visitor was my official title, which meant that I had to go out an outreach type program for migrant kids. At that time, we did have quite a few migrant families going through, and we helped them settle down into Carlsbad.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it worked out great. And
well, you know,
I was stationed at Hillcrest, and I think at that time, Crafts.
Yeah, and that's when I started working for the Juvenile Probation Office. I had this thing with Ray Anaya, who was a wonderful man to work for.
I just talked to him about an hour ago.
One of the nicest gentlemen I've ever worked for.
Yeah.
And I asked him one day, I know we've got problems here in our school in certain segments every day with some of the boys who don't want to act correctly. Yes. I said, does anybody go to Loving at any time? And he said, no. He said, would you like to go down there and check up once a week? And I said, I'd love it. So I would go down to Loving. And the people down there were so nice to me that I feel that that's my second home.
JPO?
Yes.
Juvenile Probation Officer?
Say that again slowly.
Juvenile Probation Officer.
Oh, I thought you said lobsters, and I
slur my words. English is my second language, so occasionally
your accent is, there is no accent. You sound like you were born in northern Minnesota.
Excuse me?
Yes, that's good. No, that's good.
Do I speak Nordic?
No, but you've done a remarkable job, and you learned English in 1 year.
A year and a half.
Year and a half.
I was telling you about that earlier. I came here and I was lucky enough to be in the district that belonged to Puckett School. It was a fairly new school and had very progressive type teachers. And of course we had one mean one, and that was Mrs. Galt. She made you behave. But the discipline that she had and the discipline of the school also passed on to me, and I wanted to speak to the Anglos and also the Hispanic kids, because I still have a lot of friends that
Absolutely.
we met back then.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, some of them have passed on at such a young age as me. But it took a year and a half to pick up English. It ain't good enough to where Mrs. Tatarian, the choir teacher, put me in front of the, maybe somebody else didn't want the job, but she put me in front of the PTA singing. And you should have seen me, man. Oh, my darling, oh, my darling.
You sound like Perry Como.
Well, of course.
My goodness, that's fantastic.
Robert, I don't know about you. But it was fun. And fortunately, I've also met, you didn't remember Dr. Puckett? At least, did you know of him?
No, I knew of him.
His daughter
Yes.
was a nurse
Yes.
with the county. And she was in the cellar of the courthouse. She was a public school, public health office nurse.
Wait a minute.
And she caught us up with all the shots and everything
Let's
else.
back up on that. I did know Dr. Puckett. He came around when I first came to this city, and he had to check all of the new people coming into the system
Really?
to see if they were healthy. And he was a very, very nice person.
Very nice. He deloused you too, huh?
Yes, he deloused me. Yes, absolutely.
No, his daughter was our nurse, and we got to know her. And fortunately, her daughter was at Puckett also, and we became good friends, and we're still friends to this day. And they helped me with my English, and it was another one of those propitious type of meetings that I had. People that in the community that I got to know, and that lady, the nurse, Mrs. Pruitt, had a camera that night that I sang, and she has film, or the kids have films in 8mm of me singing, and I have yet to find that film. I wish I could locate it and show it to my kids, because it's part of the family history.
Absolutely. Were you nervous when you got up there? Or were
Oh,
you...
of course I was terrified, but I was such an outgoing, I'm such a reserved person, you know.
Yeah, I know it. You're always so shy.
Yes.
Yeah. That's
I wasn't then, and I'm not now, and I was out there belting it out. And whether I spoke it good English or pronounced the right words, the idea was that I was performing in front of people, and we were having fun. I could see my compadres there next to me, my fellow classmates that were terrified. They didn't want to be there. And Mr. Ground was another person.
Bill Ground.
Bill Ground.
That's right.
Music training. I never picked up a note. I don't know how to sing. I don't know how to play anything. But by golly, he drilled those classes and gave us breaks with musical accompaniment, and we loved it.
He was outstanding.
He was an outstanding teacher.
And a very nice person.
Yes, yes, kids drew around him, and you have to have that trust. You have to have the control, and yet you have to be trusted by your kids, your students, in order to get that information into you and owning that information. You know, nowadays, you've got so many other things to do besides just teach.
Well, you know, in the old days, it was you were in front of the classroom, you were telling them where you were supposed to be in this book. You study it, have it ready for tomorrow, and they would come in, most of them, 99% of them, well prepared. There was always that one that felt, oh, I forgot that. I didn't look into that. And then they would be in trouble.
Don't get me started.
But today, it seems that you can't see many teenagers without on a cell phone. And they're in a different world, and they've left me behind. Anyway, we were talking about the children that...
You know, the chemistry, literally, the chemistry of this society, the younger generations, is totally different.
Yes, it is.
I believe that there is so much aberrant type of chemistry within their bodies that they cannot concentrate or they cannot live like you and I did. I don't think the structure is there not only that, but also the physiology, the chemistry within their bodies, but also the guidance from home.
Yes.
The value system is totally different from what you and I had, which is an evolutionary type of progress, or maybe it's a regression. But I don't see that self-discipline in the kids, and I don't see the discipline in the parents to guide those students to get to school and value education.
Yeah.
We don't see the value education extending from, well, just pass the darn test, get just the state out of our hair and be done with it. And too many people, and I'm saying here the public, and perhaps I'm generalizing too much, but we have an expectation of the teachers that's really totally unrealistic. Because a teacher in a positive situation at best is dealing with 25 different personalities.
Right. And
who have chemistry that she or he cannot control. And they have expectations and values that they cannot touch. And the students have not been inculcated with the idea that, by golly, you better behave, because if you don't behave there, you're gonna behave at home.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, remember that old adage. I criticize our society for that. Mm-hmm. We do not have the expectation to say, hey, you, Mr. Bob, are going to go to school and get an education because, not so much because of your job, but because you're also going to need it out in the street, and our nation needs it as well. Well, we have to build on from one generation to the next, and I don't see that smooth transition. We see too much of me first. It is not what the nation needs. It's what I need and what I'm going to do. And don't go beyond that. Don't expect me to fulfill somebody else's wishes.
My father would drum it into me almost every week. You're going on to college. Mm-hmm. You're going on to college, and the reason why I don't want you to end up working on a railroad the way I did. Mm-hmm. And he insisted.
Yeah. Well, my dad was insisting too, but at the time, he was making $65 a week on a farm. This is the late 60s, and he had 6 kids to feed.
Your dad was a remarkable man.
Well, he was uneducated formally, but he was very smart. Mm-hmm. And at the end of my high school career, he didn't know how he was going to make it, we were going to make it into college, but by golly, he figured out a way. We moved to California, where the community colleges were still at that time being paid by the communities, and also the state college system, which later turned into the state university system.
Right.
And fortunately, I had very little tuition to pay, and I got a 5-year college out there.
That's fantastic.
Then I came over to New Mexico State, got my master's in education and educational psychology, and became a counselor and worked my way up for 30 years here, and very happy.
But you also had good guidance from your wife.
Yeah. Every married man has good guidance from his wife, of course. Right, Bob?
Absolutely.
Isn't LaWanda so wonderful?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay,
and they guide us in the right direction.
Well, I don't know if it guides us.
Which is usually through the back door with the garbage, right?
Either that or the front door with the broomstick.
Yeah, right. No, but now your wife is still working.
Yeah, my wife has chosen to continue working. Mm-hmm. My wife is Linda, and she works at Lansing. She is the accounting department.
That's right.
And so a couple of people help her do that, but she's totally dedicated to that entity. Lansing Homes is a wonderful place, and she wants to. She's part of that personality. It's kind of like a family over there, and
yeah, absolutely.
She enjoys it so much she doesn't want to quit. I'm going to have to force her because it's getting to the end of the road, and we're going to have to enjoy our last few years together.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Now, let me ask you, in the few moments we have remaining, what do you do? What are some of your hobbies that you kind of relax in the evening with?
I'm that kind of eclectic type of personality that I could fit anywhere, and I'm not bragging. I'm telling you that my personality is such that I don't meet a stranger. If I'm fishing down at the river, that's one of the things that I do. Yeah. And tourists start walking by, I ask them where they're from. Are they enjoying it? What are the problems? How can we improve it? That's another thing that I wish I could get more involved in the improvement of Carlsbad. I am on the mayor's committee for long-range planning, mm-hmm. and I'm working on that right now. We've filled out several of those questionnaires. Besides fishing and meddling into other people's business, I like art. I used to be here at the gallery. I used to have a display, and I decided that I was too tied down to it, and I wanted to do other things. I had followed that as far as I could follow. You know, I had some sketches here. Now I'm doing some sculpture. I've got an old, I've done cars, working on some cars, and I've got a golf cart at the house right now waiting for me to finish it, painting it. And if I can scrape up enough money to register it with the city and get a quarterly fee, well, I'll see you out at the links. Fishing, art, gabbing at people, traveling. I like amateur archaeology.
Oh,
bird watching. Oh, yeah.
Bird watching.
Yeah, Steve West and I go out to Rattlesnake Springs, my old stomping grounds. You know, the old bird farm out there.
Oh, yes.
Washington Ranch used to be a state bird farm.
Yeah.
And we now, with that Rattlesnake Springs reservation there, it's a very nice place to go bird watching.
You run into any rattlesnakes at all out there?
Lately, no. We had one in my house, but that's another story. Linda doesn't want to hear about that one.
No, we won't mention that.
When we built that adobe house, we had a resident there that she was about a foot long, and we had to take care of her. But no, you know, Rattlesnake Springs is Rattlesnake Springs. I obviously named, I guess, because of rattlesnakes. Yeah. But I've never been lucky enough to run into. Yeah. Now I've run into some javelinas out there.
Oh, have you?
Recently? Oh yeah, beautiful animals. Yes. Mean, but you know, still out there, and they're populating the grounds quite a bit.
Well, I love animal life. Do you love to watch animals?
I've been an animal all my life, so I do love animal life. Yeah. So yeah, it's I'm an old country boy.
But you haven't given up art completely, have you?
No, no, no. I still dabble.
Yeah.
And I don't sell it anymore. I just enjoy it, give it away. It's instead of beating up my wife, you know, or beating up my kids, I beat a pile of clay into some kind of form, and if I don't like it, then I beat it into the wall, and you know, it just helps.
And
I don't need a psychiatrist.
You're your own psychiatrist?
My own psychiatrist. Psychotherapy, you know, make one of these pots or whatever.
All I can say is, Israel, this has been very enjoyable.
Oh, this is just the beginning.
And you never know a stranger. Every time you see me, you holler hello.
Oh yeah, and it's usually a good hug.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's the way.
There's only one problem though.
What's that?
Well, the last time you gave me a hug, you said, "It's so nice to see you, Fred."
Fred?
Yeah.
Well, I'm getting old, Fred.
Hey, thanks for being our guest today.
Thanks a lot, Robert.
And to our audience, goodbye and good luck.
Thank you very much.